Are you familiar with this criticism I've heard from, I believe his name is David Smolin, from a law professor in Alabama, and others, that will say that, in fact, in some cases, some of the enthusiasm for what I call planned orphanhood, or designed adoption by design, it's not a lost child, and that is that it comes from the anti-abortion cause, and that is, we say, okay, we are absolutely against abortion, and I used to have a bumper sticker myself that just said adoption is an option. To give one example that came up, it's just there's no coincidences, I guess, but it's just a kind of strange irony. The day before the Supreme Court decided Windsor versus the United States, the first same-sex marriage case, the Supreme Court decided adoptive couple versus baby girl. And that involved a father who kind of haphazardly relinquished, then wanted to get back, and he was just a poor guy, and the family was your nice, sort of pro-life, middle-class family. And one of the things that comes out in these cases is that the young women who are pregnant are basically offered money. It's not strictly speaking salary, but it's like help, with the expectation that they will give the child up for adoption. That is to say, it's not the abandonment and then somebody comes along. It's that somebody comes along and tells a pregnant woman, why don't you give me the child? And this is extremely, I don't wish to, denounce any of this, but it struck me that this isn't the type of adoption you're talking about. And that may be a situation where even pro-life groups connecting middle-class money with poor mothers might be actually assisting in the disintegration of the mother-child and also the father-child relation. Because they want, as David explains, they'd rather have the father quickly sign the paper and walk out the door. It makes it faster. We want to get both the parents, the mother, out of the way, and there's money and there's motivations to get them to do so. I don't know if you're familiar with this. I'm only vaguely familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the deal. If you're going to participate in a baby-making activity outside of a lifelong commitment, the child will suffer. It's just what kind of brokenness are they going to have to face, right? If you don't ultimately get married, are they going to have to face the devastation of shuffling between homes, dad being totally gone, relinquishment to adoption? And that's why it's so important to make sure that if you're going to engage in a baby-making activity, it needs to be with somebody that has publicly declared that they will raise the baby with you, okay? Now, I will say that I talk a lot about the harm, the trauma that children suffer when they are separated from their birth mother during surrogacy. Even if the baby is handed over to Kim and Kanye, and they are the genetic parents, right? That on the day the baby is born, the surrogate is the only, not just the only parent, but the only person that the baby knows. Okay, that baby wants her milk, her smell, her body, her voice. And for the baby to lose that surrogate's presence, the baby has to process it as a death. Okay? The baby doesn't know they're genetically related to Kim and Kanye. The baby just wants the surrogate. To the baby, that's the mother. And so I talk a lot about the trauma inflicted on children because of that. And adoptees call that the primal wound. And adoptees have been talking about this for a while. Now, sometimes it's necessary in adoption, but it's still tragic. But to inflict it on a child intentionally through surrogacy is an injustice. Now, I support adoption in situations like my son's, where he was in an institution for 20 months. There's no identifying information, like almost all kids from China, there's zero identifying information about the parents because it's illegal to abandon your children, so birth parents are careful not to leave any trace. I have friends who are adopting a girl from the Ivory Coast, who is, both parents have died in the AIDS epidemic. All of her other siblings have been adopted by, or some 5 were adopted through family members. She's the last one that has nowhere they're adopting her, right? I've got lots of friends who are doing foster care for situations where the child genuinely is not safe in the biological parent's home. Okay, so that's the scenario that we're talking about. Genuinely, the child is in need. And you're right, there are a lot of situations where adoption agencies or prospective parents will hover over, or, you know, back in the baby scoop era in the 50s and 60s, the word was coerce, right? Coerce women out of their babies. Sometimes where the birth mother never even saw the baby or held the baby or touched the baby, and the mom probably would have been a great mom. She was just single, you know, and it probably would have been really helpful to have some extended family support. And those babies say, I was wounded, I was harmed because I was separated from her. And interestingly, with this new movement, this children's rights movement we're starting, the kids with same-sex parents are like, thank God I finally have a place where I'm not the freak, you know, where I'm not the one that is the bigot because I said I wanted a dad, you know. And the donor-conceived kids are organizing. I mean, they're really putting stuff together to advocate for their rights. The kids of divorce are like, finally, good heavens, this has been, you know, 40 years in the making. But the one group that I received the most pushback from is adoptees. Because many of them can't understand how I could endorse any adoption at all. They feel like they've been so harmed by being separated from their birth mother and being placed with a family that is not genetically related, that they, I mean, watch it on my Facebook page when we post anything about adoption, right? You will get wounded adoptees talking about the pain that they experience. And so that's not all adoptees, but that is to say that we should never casually separate children from their birth mother, ever. I mean, I am definitely in the camp of, if there's a young woman who is pregnant and there's no dad in the picture, the solution is probably parenting, right? Not adoption. And I think that pro-lifers need to navigate that a little bit better, because we do swing so... Lila Rose shared an article that I wrote 2 weeks ago about the tragic case of James Younger, right here in Texas, where there was a custody battle between mom and dad, and mom wanted to transition James into being a little girl, and I would say from the evidence that I saw was suggesting and affirming him as a girl and not as a boy, and kids are pretty easily conditioned. So I wrote about how that boy was conceived via an egg donor and how she's not the biological parent of the child. Well, Lila Rose shared that on her Facebook page, Lila Rose of Live Action, and it got tons and tons of hits. And it was all about why biological parents are really important to kids. And the backlash was all, you're against adoptive parents. If we ever say anything bad about adoption, that means abortion rates are going to skyrocket. No, we're going to need a little more sophistication here. Okay? It's okay to say abortion is categorically wrong, and adoption begins with loss. Okay? Those two things are not mutually exclusive, and we need to be able to be honest about it.
As you just mentioned, for those of you who aren't familiar with the case, what happened is the court decided in 5-4, and all of the conservatives were on the side of the middle-class adoptive parent, with the exception of Justice Scalia. This is the day before the liberal majority redefines marriage in Windsor, joins Justice Sotomayor's opinion, which is all about the natural rights of parents to their children. And Scalia was the one person that looks on the court that looks fairly conservative. I should also mention the facts of that case indicate it's not simply that there's a dad not in the picture, is that the possibility of middle-class money, the young woman who's poor has a choice. Living with her fiance, who was her fiance, and he's not the best guy, he's a poor guy, and getting the cash, there was an incentive for her to find a way to get rid of him, so then she could also effectuate the adoption inconsistent with the would-be adoptive parents' wishes. And the court waxed eloquently, the adoptive parents were with her throughout the pregnancy. And they were with her at the birth, and I said, if that's what they were offering, of course you'd choose that rather than this dude. That dude is making a mess. You share a bathroom with that guy? Why would you want to do that? And you have these and $10,000 is a lot of money for poor people. You put that down in front of a poor 20-year-old and you say, look, we really want to help you. Please make sure you can effectuate this adoption. First thing she does is she tells him to get lost. I'm not happy with this engagement anymore. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but the circumstantial evidence of a kind of pro-life approach was that it broke up both the marital engagement as well as the mother-daughter relation.